Hey everyone, this is Ben Pierce at Designercon 2016. We're currently in the Prints on Wood booth with the man, the myth, the cult leader, the legend, Jermaine Rogers. Jermaine, how you doing?
I'm doing fine.
So, this is second year of Designercon for you?
Second year.
How's this year compared to last year?
Well, I mean, last year was amazing. A lot of activity. And this year, if it's possible, it doubled in intensity. It's just really amazing. A lot of people showed up, a lot of crowds, but in a good way. You know,
Yeah.
it was a sort of a manageable crowd. So I think everybody is being accommodated, but at the same time, there's more people here to see more things.
Yeah. Designercon definitely seems a lot more full this year as compared to last year, and even your booth seems pretty full this year too. So is this status quo for how your Legion comes out and sees you?
Well, I mean, I have to say that I'm fortunate that I once said that like I make art for desperate people, and so there's a lot of desperate people out there, right? And so we all band together as a tribe, and I'm sort of a little spokesman for my group, and so it's very nice to see them. I typically do one of these sort of events a year. And for many years it was San Diego Comic-Con. This past year I didn't go to Comic-Con. I had my booth there, but I didn't come personally. So this is the one time that I can really see a lot of people and skin on skin. Yeah.
So this year was the first real release of your Veil figure in the vinyl form.
Well, actually, the first Veil figure that I did came out in 2007. Different sculpt. But the one that I've sort of been hinting at for the last year or so, it finally dropped this week.
So how's that with getting produced and everything? I know that last year was the creeping resin series that you would release.
Right.
This year it's the vinyl that it looks like.
Yeah, and so far so good. I mean, we had some issues, but I mean that's part of the game when you're doing vinyl. I self-produce all of my things, so I mean I'm dealing with the factory in China, and I'm dealing with a great sculptor. A pleasure to deal with the sculptor, Clem Kazinovich over at Big Shot Toy Works. Really helped, bring it to life. I sent him a ton of drawings, and he just matched them perfectly. And then it's dealing with China, and so that can be good on some days. Some days it's a little tough, but I think what we have justifies the wait.
Yeah. And so leading up to Designercon, there were two Veils that were released. There was the regular, there was the debris that you'd hinted at, and the two final ones that were game day reveals that kind of drove everyone crazy was the glow in the dark and the kaiju, or reptilian, whichever way you want to phrase it.
Right.
So for the kaiju colorway, or reptilian, with the kaiju colors, did you do a lot of that, or who did you have help you with that?
Well, that was something you spoke about the creeping, and that was a project that I worked on closely with Jay and Nicole over at Mana Studios.
Okay.
And so we kind of talked a little bit. I had these weird ideas about some things, and so I would call up Jay and say, is it possible to make it look this way? Can we make it? And so sending him pictures and him giving me ideas, we were able to come up with both the debris and the kaiju colorways. And I mean, it was I think people liked them. It's a more involved process, but it's for probably a more involved collector. Yeah.
So with kaiju being mentioned, that community is used to lotteries. Your followers are going to groan at that a little bit, or some may relish in it.
Right.
Is a lottery possibly ever going to happen with your figures?
You know what? I don't know. I come originally from the world of poster art. And so in gig poster art, you'd run into the same situation. If I release a poster for Neil Young or Nine Inch Nails or Queens of the Stone Age, whoever, and there's only 100 signed and numbered copies, that sometimes are hurt feelings, and people can't stand it. People hate the eBay flippers, but all of that happens online.
Yeah.
So, here typically it's a big following, but amazingly they have been able to develop a sort of communal civility. And so, like, for instance, yesterday in the morning, there were already 30 people in line, and one guy came in who everybody realized had been waiting outside all night. And I just basically left it up to the group, and everybody said, let him go. So we'll continue to enjoy that utopia as long as it lasts. I mean, it's at some point, we may have to go to lottery, but until people start ranting and raving for it, I'm going to try to maintain status quo.
So I know you talked about Neil Young and them, and obviously you've had a long career with poster gig art. Has there been a band or bands in which have not rang your doorbell or died before you got into the...
there are tons of bands, obviously, where I wasn't alive yet. I would love to have done a Jimi Hendrix poster and all that, but most of the bands in my era that I wanted to work with, I've worked with. There is one big exception, and I may actually be about to do a poster for that artist, so I don't want to jinx it.
Okay.
So I'm not going to say it, but if it works, the minute people see it, they're going to go like, yep, that's who he was talking about.
What's a different artist that you may not have an iron in the fire for?
That's hard to say. Like, I'm pretty aggressive at times when I wanted to go after someone, and I got it. So, I tell you, I wish Joni Mitchell would perform again. I know she's had some health issues, but I'm a big Joni Mitchell fan. I'd love to do a Joni Mitchell piece. I would have loved to do a Pete Seeger piece before he passed away. A Bobby Womack piece. But everybody else, I'm either like I've been able to do it, or I've been friends with, or I don't know. This is year 21 for me of doing gig posters, so I've squeezed in a lot in that 21 years.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And for all the graciousness that your fans seem to have, on the side of your veil box, there are multiple colorways.
Right.
Would you be gracious enough to tell them when they could expect maybe one of the other colorways?
Okay, yeah. I think right around, I typically like to do something like in the dead of winter. So
kind of like a polar bear.
Maybe a polar bear. You said that, I didn't. But probably, sometime in late January, sometime in February, we may release another colorway. The regular edition will, you'll start seeing that around here in the next month or so. And then, we'll slowly build up. There will be a new vinyl piece that is kind of directly related to this veil piece. There'll be another one that is coming out in the summer. It'll come out probably probably a month before Comic-Con. And then there's a lot of resin coming out. There's a lot. I was telling someone earlier, resin satisfies my instant gratification. Vinyl is such an involved process that takes many months. But resin, if you can get the idea right, you can get the sculpt right, domestically you can get it made, and so resin. There'll be a lot of resin in 2017, and there'll be some new vinyl as well.
Was J-Roo the one that helped you with that sculpting on the resin, or who was it?
Actually, the J-Roo did that wonderful creeping sculpt, and we worked really. And one of these days, I'm going to work with J-Roo again. J-Roo is an amazing artist, but the new sculpts that are coming out for resin, Clem Kazinovich. I'm working closely with Clem, and we've got some weird ideas, and we'll see if we can make them physically work. So
So I guess while we're in the Prints on Wood booth, you had a smaller print, and we have the Bowie tribute behind us. I guess first off, was this in the works before Bowie passed?
This was actually released. This image was originally used on a Foo Fighters tour poster back in 2008. And then I released an art print of it as well. I've always been a big Bowie fan. Ever since I was a little kid, my mother had a copy of Diamond Dogs, and I used to stare at the cover. That cover is so influentially important in my life as an artist, because it was the first thing that kind of connected rock and roll and art for me. This was done a long time before, and then when he did pass away, it was interesting because he passed away, and over the next few days, this image, everybody started using it, and then people who weren't necessarily Jermaine Rogers fans started using it, and then I start seeing it being used in some pretty, visible places, and which made me feel good because in a way that I don't know, in some weird way, I think it captured what everyone was feeling, the sadness. Yeah.
And having your art visible in high-profile places, you had some USA Today features, along with a presidential hopeful was using your image.
Yeah.
So how did I guess either of those or both of those kind of come into being?
Well, I got about this time last year, I got a phone call from a friend of mine, Jerry Yoshizu, who used to do all of the awesome art projects at Scion Motors.
Okay.
Scion helped so many artists, and Jerry was the one who was really helping a lot of us out when we needed it. But she called me and she said, someone from the Bernie Sanders campaign wants to talk with you. Can I give them your number? I was like, oh, fine. And it was Louis Calder, great guy, amazing, just energetic guy, and he was handling the sort of the art for the Bernie Sanders campaign. So I did the image that I did, and everybody liked it. And then on the day of the Iowa caucus, the first caucus, the campaign posted it on their Facebook page, and they Instagrammed it, and it's sort of from that point on, it just, and it was a pleasure, man. I've never done any artwork for any political candidate. I typically don't trust organizational structures. I'm sort of like, I give the side eye to a lot of, politics, religion, all that stuff. But he was the first guy in my adult life that I felt was like not lying to me. He was just being straight, and so I enjoyed working with the campaign and gave them full use of the artwork to use as they saw fit. And so yeah, that's how it happened. I mean, and the artwork, I wanted to design a piece, even though he didn't get the nomination, should have. But even though he didn't, the artwork, that image, I think, is still relevant to a progressive movement, and it speaks to many different people from different areas, all sort of being one aesthetic tribe. And so the image is still being used, and people still, and I sort of, I designed it that way. I didn't want to design something that was so election-centric that after the election it would be obsolete. Yeah. So, yeah, it worked out.
Yeah. And so with that, I'd heard you say earlier about art versus paper, people who collect the art versus people who collect the paper.
Right.
Obviously, you get paid either way, whether people collect the image or the paper. But
right.
What are your feelings on that whole mindset?
Well, yeah, I've always said, as we spoke earlier, it's better to collect images. Don't collect pieces of paper. An image is really what it's all about. That's where the magic, the idea. And if you collect images, there's so many people, that are investmentary collectors, right? And I mean, I've got as you said, I mean, those people also help me pay my bills, right? So I mean, whatever. But it is so much more fulfilling when I have someone who really collects the artwork, and that's what resonates with them, because that establishes legacy. That lasts. Poster values rise and fall. Paper art values rise and fall. And really, when you've reduced your experience to value, you've turned art into a very cheap thing. It's you don't see the soul of the artist. You see dollars and cents, and and that's just my opinion. I mean, I say that, like, as I said, knowing that I benefit, like, I'm going to get paid either way. Right. But I would suggest that people collect images, and that way, you know what, you never have to worry, like, oh, did I get my money's worth? If you collect images that you really love, service is rendered. You got your money's worth. And then, if those things do appreciate in value later, it's going to feel so much sweeter because you saw it first, right?
Yeah.
So,
And as far as imagery, like the one print that I have that I really love from you is the Primus Where the Wild Things Are, because it also incorporates MCA, because at that time both Maurice Sendak and MCA passed away.
yeah, you attach so much energy to these visuals, and what you hope is that these images become interlaced in the fabric of people's lives. You know, it's the same way with a song, you know, like whatever, you know, take any band, you know, and they write a song. The least important person, after the song or after the art is made, the least important person in quantifying the value aesthetically of an image is the artist. Like once you do it and you let it go, it's almost like foolish for you to try to dictate to people the function of the artwork, because it's going to mean something to this guy, it's going to mean something to her, very different things, which is why when I do artwork, I give very, very general background as to what I was feeling when I did it. Because why would I steal that from you? Why would I steal away your power to own that artwork? And in a way, that helps me, because if I can create, if my business is creating something that you co-opt and own, and it makes you feel more powerful, that's the secret. A good artist realizes, like, it's my job to make people feel something. And if I can make you feel something strongly,
Did your job.
I did my job, and you'll come back to me when you are lacking feelings, or when you need to feel something else. You will kind of hang around the area where, like, I'm going to hang around this area because last time I hung around this area, that guy made me feel really good, or the guy he expressed my outrage, or he made me think, or and that's really what art is about, I think.
So the first taste is free and the rest hooks you.
I always say, like I always call it a smallpox blanket. You know what smallpox blanket is, right? It's like, you know, those evil guys that came over here from wherever, Spain or wherever, and they gave the Native Americans these blankets, and they traded these blankets to Native, and the Native Americans are like, wow, this beautiful fabric, all these colors. Little did they know that these guys had laced the blankets with smallpox. And Native Americans, you know, had no natural immunity against that. So I always consider the art as a smallpox blanket. Like it's
infectious.
I want to give you something, and you go, oh, you know, a Queens of Stone Age poster, or oh, look at this toy. And I've sort of laced it with, you know, well, what do you think about religion? Well, what do you think about what your parents tell you? What do you think about society? You lace it with these things, and then as people have it hanging in their homes or displayed in their homes, that stuff gradually comes out, and that's what you want. Like, I would rather have strong feelings either way, of positivity or even hate. I'd rather have either of those than apathy. I'd rather have people go like, yeah, I've seen his stuff. You know, I much prefer somebody saying, oh man, that guy's work is shit. I hate that guy. Like, because at least I made you look, right? But, yeah.
Well, I think we've taken up enough of your time, but are there any parting words that you have for the fans, the viewers of the Weekly Wrap-Up, or your loyal legion?
Well, I'd just like to tell everybody thank you so much for all of the support that you give me as an artist, and that you give to the arts, period. And you know what? We're in some weird times right now. I don't have to go into detail. Everybody, you know, is feeling it. But just remember, you are ancient energy inside of a disposable body. The energy that is animating your heartbeat has always existed. It's been in the belly of stars. It's been in the tail of comets. It's been, no doubt, in countless organisms who've lived and died off through time. So don't sweat it. It's scary, but step back and realize that, like Bill Hicks said, it's just a ride.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So thank you, Jermaine, for your time, and thank you everyone who watched this interview.
Hey everyone, this is Travis Likens from Token Nerd Podcast, and I'm here today to tell you something about sponsorship. That's right, Token Nerd now has a sponsor. The fine folks at TenaciousToys.com, your source for designer toys, pop vinyl, original art, and more, are now our sponsor. And guess what? As a part of that, you can get 10% off your next order at TenaciousToys.com by entering the code TOKEN10 at checkout. That's right, 10% off. And not only are they giving you this code, they're also going to be sponsoring many of our Token Nerd giveaways in the next coming months. So make sure to follow us at token_nerd on Instagram to catch our latest giveaway.